Did you know that over 10 million people are living in the US illegally right now? And here's the kicker. Many risk their lives every single day, crossing dangerous borders and facing threats you couldn't even imagine. So why would they do it? Stay tuned as we uncover the shocking reasons behind this global phenomenon, and more importantly, where are they coming from? You won't believe which countries top the list, and the jaw-dropping stories that drive this migration. Keep watching, because the truth is more startling than you think. Welcome back to our channel, your go-to place for exploring the world's untold stories. Today, we're diving deep into one of the most controversial and emotional topics of our time: illegal immigration. We'll be revealing the top 10 countries that contribute the most undocumented immigrants to the US, along with the heart-wrenching reasons behind their dangerous journey. But here's something that'll leave you speechless. Did you know that in just the past decade, one country's undocumented population has exploded by over 500%? Stay with us to find out which one it is. Before we jump in, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that bell so you won't miss any of our videos. And if you've ever had personal experiences with immigration, we'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment below and share your thoughts. Now, let's uncover the shocking truth. Mexico has been at the top of the list for years, with over 4 million undocumented immigrants living in the US as of 2022. But what keeps Mexico at the forefront year after year? Economic desperation is a huge factor. Many Mexicans face extreme poverty and limited opportunities at home, pushing them to seek a better life in the US. For families struggling to make ends meet, the US represents not only an opportunity for economic growth, but also the promise of a safer environment for their children. Many are motivated by family reunification. Relatives already in the US inspire hope for a better future. In some cases, entire families migrate together, driven by the desire to build a life free from the hardships they face in Mexico. In others, individuals make the perilous journey alone, with the hope of bringing their family members to join them later. However, while Mexican immigration has actually declined in recent years, the numbers are still high due to persistent violence from drug cartels and the lure of the American dream. The violent drug trade in many parts of Mexico creates an atmosphere of fear and danger, forcing many to flee in search of safety. Despite the risks involved in crossing the border illegally, the pull of economic opportunities and the prospect of a better life continue to be powerful motivators. The migration of Mexicans to the US is not just a recent phenomenon. It has been happening for generations. From labor migration in the early 20th century to the current wave, Mexicans have consistently sought work in the US, contributing significantly to industries such as agriculture, construction, and manufacturing. Even with tightening border controls, the flow of migrants has not stopped, as many Mexican families have deep-rooted connections in the US. Let's explore the ongoing challenges that Mexicans face in the US, from the dangers of crossing the border to the ongoing fight for legal status, and why Mexico remains the leading source of undocumented immigrants. But Mexico isn't the only country contributing to the undocumented population in the US. Let's turn to a smaller but increasingly troubled country, one whose people face unimaginable danger every single day. Imagine living in a place where gang violence controls every aspect of life. For the 750,000 Salvadorans living in the US illegally, escape from this nightmare is the only option. Every day, families live in constant fear of being caught in gang violence or being forced into gang membership. In many neighborhoods, the streets are ruled by gangs, and people live under the constant threat of violence. Parents often face heartbreaking decisions, whether to keep their children in a dangerous environment or risk the dangerous journey north to give them a better future. The Salvadoran government's inability to combat the pervasive influence of these criminal organizations has only worsened the situation. Beyond the violence, El Salvador is also battling extreme poverty. Many families struggle to meet basic needs, and the country's economy offers little hope for upward mobility. The devastating aftermath of natural disasters, such as earthquakes and hurricanes, has compounded the problem. These disasters not only destroy homes, but also devastate already fragile economies, pushing even more people to leave in search of a better life. The journey north isn't just a way out, it's a fight for survival. And yet, despite these challenges, many Salvadorans still find themselves stuck in a state of uncertainty. They face the constant fear of deportation, even as they try to build a better life in the U.S. The risk of being sent back to the violence and poverty they fled is a constant fear that many Salvadorans live with every day. But why does a growing number of immigrants from other countries, like India, choose to make this perilous journey as well? It might surprise you, but the reasons behind their migration are quite different. India is now one of the top sources of undocumented immigrants to the U.S., with 725,000 undocumented Indians living in the country. Unlike Mexico or El Salvador, many of these immigrants come seeking better economic opportunities, higher education, or career advancement. India's rapidly growing economy has provided opportunities for many, but it has also created sharp disparities in wealth. The allure of a better life in the U.S., with its promise of prosperity, social mobility, and educational opportunities, draws many. The journey is often less about escaping violence or poverty, and more about pursuing the American dream. These immigrants often have college degrees, professional skills, and a desire to build a better future for their families. However, due to the complexity of the U.S. immigration system, many overstay their visas. Unable to navigate the maze of legal processes or find a path to permanent residency, they find themselves living in the shadows, undocumented. Some even turn to smuggling networks, paying exorbitant fees to enter the U.S. illegally. While the dream of a better life is enticing, the risks they take are enormous. For many, the possibility of deportation looms large, making every day an uncertain one. But what happens when the journey isn't just about improving one's life, but escaping economic collapse? This next country shows how dire the situation can get. Guatemala's 675,000 undocumented immigrants in the U.S. are driven by the same mix of poverty, violence, and environmental devastation that pushes people from other countries to flee. Gang violence is rampant in many areas, where criminal organizations control territories and often demand tribute from local residents. This creates an atmosphere of fear, where families are at the mercy of violent gangs, leaving them with no choice but to leave everything behind. Natural disasters, such as floods and droughts, have made agriculture unsustainable in some regions. This has devastated the livelihoods of many rural families who rely on farming as their main source of income. The combination of violence, poverty, and environmental destruction forces many Guatemalans to take life-threatening journeys northward in search of a better life. For many Guatemalans, the choice is clear. Risk everything to escape a cycle of despair or stay and face the consequences. These migrants aren't just escaping hardship, they're fighting for their very survival. As they trek across dangerous terrain, they encounter many obstacles, from treacherous weather conditions to exploitation by human traffickers. Yet, the promise of safety and a better life for their children keeps them going despite the odds. From Central America to South America, we now look at a country in the midst of political and economic chaos, a place where hyperinflation has left millions searching for hope. Venezuela's 270,000 undocumented immigrants in the U.S. represent the mass exodus caused by the country's devastating economic crisis. For the past decade, Venezuela has been spiraling into an economic disaster, with hyperinflation that has rendered the country's currency nearly worthless. Daily life has become a struggle for millions. Basic necessities such as food, medicine, and even clean water are in short supply. Inflation has reached astronomical levels, where even the simplest items, like bread or milk, cost more than most Venezuelans can afford. It's not just the lack of resources. Political instability has led to widespread corruption and a government that seems unwilling or unable to address the crisis. Many Venezuelans are now forced to make a harrowing decision: stay and face an uncertain future, or risk everything by embarking on a dangerous journey north. For Venezuelans, the journey to the U.S. is a desperate attempt to escape a failing state. But even after reaching the border, many still face uncertain futures. Caught in the limbo of immigration status, these migrants live in constant fear of deportation back to the country they fled. They often face discrimination, exploitation, and harsh living conditions, all while struggling to build a life in a country that might not welcome them with open arms. But not all migration stories are driven by crisis. Some countries, like the Philippines, have a long history of migration and a unique connection to the United States. Let's take a closer look at the migration story of the Philippines and how its people have shaped the undocumented immigrant landscape in the U.S. With 310,000 undocumented immigrants, the Philippines has a long history of migration to the U.S., primarily driven by the desire for better economic opportunities and family reunification. The connection between the Philippines and the United States dates back over a century, and this historical relationship continues to shape the migration patterns of Filipinos today. The Philippines was once an American colony, and since then, many Filipinos have migrated to the U.S. seeking better opportunities for themselves and their families. In fact, many first-generation immigrants entered on temporary visas for work or study, but due to difficulties navigating the complex U.S. immigration system, they ended up overstaying and becoming undocumented. For many Filipinos, the journey to the U.S. is less about fleeing violence or political oppression and more about the pursuit of a better life. Many arrive with the hope of finding work in fields like healthcare, technology, and hospitality, where their skills are in demand. However, despite their qualifications and aspirations, the road to legal status in the U.S. is often blocked by bureaucratic hurdles, leaving them to navigate a precarious situation without proper documentation. Despite these challenges, the Filipino community remains resilient, relying on a strong support system built around family ties. Filipinos often create tight-knit communities in the U.S., where extended families provide support to help new immigrants adjust to life in a foreign country. But even with this network of support, the constant fear of being discovered and deported looms over many undocumented Filipinos, leaving them in a perpetual state of uncertainty. From Asia to South America, undocumented migration isn't just about escaping violence or poverty, it's also about pursuing a brighter future. For many, it's about seeking freedom, opportunity, and the hope of a better life. Now let's take a look at China's growing role in the undocumented immigration crisis. China, with 400,000 undocumented immigrants in the U.S., presents a unique story. For many Chinese immigrants, the journey to the U.S. is motivated by the search for better educational and economic opportunities. China's rapid economic growth in recent decades has lifted millions out of poverty, but the reality for many remains starkly different, especially for those from rural areas or marginalized communities. A significant number of Chinese immigrants come to the U.S. to pursue higher education, seeking to study at prestigious universities or find jobs in the thriving tech industry. However, many of these students and workers overstay their visas, unable to secure permanent residency due to the highly competitive immigration system. In other cases, some Chinese immigrants enter the U.S. illegally, by relying on smuggling networks, paying large sums to cross borders in dangerous conditions. But it's not just economic opportunity that drives Chinese migration. For some, it's the desire to escape political repression or to seek greater personal freedoms. In particular, Chinese citizens from regions like Tibet or Hong Kong may be fleeing political crackdowns, looking for a place where they can freely express their beliefs and live without fear of persecution. Despite the challenges, Chinese migrants continue to make the dangerous journey, sometimes relying on smuggling networks to enter the country. They are willing to take these risks because for them, the possibility of a better future in the US outweighs the dangers they face along the way. In South America, another country grapples with its own set of challenges, leading its people to take the risky journey to the US. Let's take a look at Colombia and the factors that have contributed to its citizens seeking refuge in the US. Colombia's 130,000 undocumented immigrants in the US are often fleeing violence caused by guerrilla warfare and drug cartels. For decades, Colombia has been plagued by armed conflict, with multiple factions fighting for control of the country's resources and drug trade. This violence has torn apart entire communities, displacing millions and leaving them with no choice but to flee for their lives. While conditions in Colombia have improved in recent years, the effects of decades of instability continue to be felt. Many Colombians still face economic instability, inadequate education, and a lack of basic services in rural areas. These factors make migration to the US seem like the only viable option for a better future. For many, the journey to the US is not just about escaping the violence of their homeland. It's also about finding economic opportunity and rebuilding their lives in a place where they can feel safe. Once they arrive in the US, many Colombian migrants settle in urban areas like Miami, New York, or Houston, where there are already established Colombian communities offering support and guidance. But while they may find a sense of community, they still face the daunting reality of living as undocumented immigrants, with the constant threat of deportation hanging over their heads. But while these countries face economic and political challenges, other nations are seeing a rise in migration for different reasons. Let's take a closer look at Brazil, which is now sending a growing number of undocumented immigrants to the US. With 200,000 undocumented immigrants, Brazil's citizens are migrating to the US to escape economic disparity, corruption, and high crime rates. Brazil, the largest country in South America, has long struggled with high levels of inequality, with a small elite controlling much of the wealth, while millions of Brazilians live in poverty. This economic disparity has led many to seek better opportunities in the US, hoping to escape the cycle of poverty and insecurity that defines life in Brazil's favelas and rural communities. In addition to economic challenges, Brazil has also been grappling with high crime rates, fueled by the country's ongoing struggle with organized crime and drug trafficking. These issues make it difficult for many Brazilians to live without fear of violence, further motivating them to seek refuge in the US. Their stories highlight the universal struggles of migration, the desire for safety, opportunity, and a better life. For many Brazilians, the journey to the US is a desperate bid for a chance at a new life, even though they know the road will be difficult and fraught with uncertainty. And finally, we turn to the Dominican Republic, a country whose people have long been part of the migration story to the US. Let's explore why their numbers remain so significant in today's immigration landscape. With 164,000 undocumented immigrants in the US, the Dominican Republic's migration story is rooted in economic hardship and political instability. Much like many other countries in Latin America, the Dominican Republic has faced widespread poverty, lack of opportunity, and political unrest throughout its history. As a result, many Dominicans have sought to leave the island in search of a better future, with the U.S. serving as the primary destination. Family reunification remains a key motivator for migration from the Dominican Republic. As Dominican communities in the U.S. have grown, many new immigrants are drawn to join family members who have already established themselves in places like New York, Miami, and other urban centers. For many, the U.S. represents not just economic opportunity, but a place where they can be reunited with loved ones, build a new life, and escape the challenges they faced back home. Illegal immigration is a deeply complex issue, shaped by factors ranging from economic desperation to political turmoil. Each of these countries tells a unique story, but they all share one common thread: a desire for a better life, free from the burdens they face at home. If this topic has resonated with you, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. What do you think about the immigration crisis? Let us know in the comments below. And don't miss our next video, where we'll explore the most dangerous immigration routes in the world. Stay tuned.